jugadores y jugadoras, sean ustedes bienvenidos a este su canal de videojuegos Biomechanical Game Zone. En esta ocasión vamos a jugar un título de terror llamado Autopsy Simulator. Vamos a ver de qué trata, no lo he jugado, no sé nada de él. Vamos a ver qué tal nos va con este juegazo. Si te agrada el contenido, dale like, suscríbete y compártelo con quien más, pero más confianza le tengas. Sin más que añadir, vamos ya, let's go. Yo ya lo había comenzado, pero no lo inicié, ¿va? Pues vamos ya, continuamos. O sea, continuamos de... Nada más me di las 3, lo chequé rápido y ya. No. Pero vamos a ver de qué trata. Aparte de autopsias, ¿no? ¿Qué opinan de las autopsias? ¿Ustedes qué saben? ¿No? Imagínense trabajar en un lugar así y luego encima que espanten. No manches. No. Ok, el prólogo. Muy bien. Vamos ya.
Office of the Medical Examiner, Beatsville. Dr. Jack Hanman is speaking. How can I help you?
Good evening, this is Kate Brooks. I'm not sure if you remember me. A few weeks ago, we talked about an article I'm working on. It's about your wife. I dropped by last Friday to speak to you, but you weren't working at the time. I asked the security guard to pass on a note for me. I would like us to discuss the topic of...
I thought I had made it painfully obvious for the last time. No! Please don't call me again and stop inquiring about my wife. Damn journalists. They don't let me work.
Tranquilo, viejo.
Damn it. I'm not in the best frame of mind to record a lecture for my students now. I'm feeling completely broken. Where did I leave my meds this time?
Ok. Espérenme tantito. Pienso que... Ajá. Ok. Ok, ahora sí. ¿Qué es esto? Leer dice: hola, soy Kate Brooks, reportera del New Orleans Weekly, ¿no? No he podido encontrarlo en casa, empiezo a sospechar que me evita. Señor Hanman, en fin, como sabe, nos gustaría escribir un artículo para recordar sus logros de su esposa. Estaríamos encantados de hablar con usted al respecto. Por ahí viene ese más el asunto, ¿eh? Le dejo mi tarjeta de visita junto con esta nota. Permítame que le llame esta tarde, espero encontrarlo en la oficina. Ahí. Saludos, Kate Brooks. Ok.
They definitely pay me too little for this.
Se echó un
Stephen
cigarrito.
didn't clean up after himself again. He won't be needed for the next few months.
Ok, vamos a tratar de explorar todo.
Wednesday. It's not my favorite day, although it's certainly better than Monday. I guess it was in another life.
Su esposa, ¿no? Quiero pensar. Algo pasó. Cabecito.
Awful. It would be good to finally repair the coffee machine.
Ok. Ok, toma, el señor toma. Papeles. Vamos a... Nada. Ok, un sillón.
Not very comfortable, but suitable for night shifts.
Papeles, más papeles. What? Libros. Ok. Oh, por Dios, este men tiene las puercoderosas. Un chango. What? Vamos a ver qué hay allá. No se vaya a meter un aire polaco. Es evidente que toma el señor, ¿no? Otra persona desaparecida. Análisis del animal como en casos forenses. Aquí una nota con un beso. Anatomía del cuerpo. Ok.
Archives. Just as lifeless as the corpses they concern.
Archivos. Bueno. Basura. Dijo que tiene que buscar sus pastillas en el baño y me asustó, güey.
But the word is, the lab will be open tomorrow.
Muchas cosas interesantes, ¿no? Del cuerpo humano. ¿Qué es esto?
This place is starting to look like a hoarder's dream, rather than a storage room.
Fuera de servicio. Quiero pensar que está aquí, ¿no? What? Bueno, aquí está hecho un desmadre en la oficina.
Only useful when I need to clear leaves from the gutters. But why in the bathroom? Okay, time to pull myself together. And get back to work.
Ok. Vamos a explorar.
I need to set the camera first.
Ajá, es lo que te iba a decir. Pero vamos primero a... Lo que me llama la atención es que está todo...
I don't see any need to mess with the electrics. They are flaky enough as it is.
Me llama la atención que está en remodelación, se acaban de cambiar de instalaciones. No sé qué pedo.
Now remember, Jack, don't forget, hit the record button this time.
¿Qué? ¿Dónde? Me imagino que allá, ¿no?
Hopefully the new tripod is going to hold up. Now, I just have to get everything in frame. This should be fine. November 20th, 1991. Time, 8:43 p.m. Recording for medical students from the University of Missouri. This autopsy is conducted by Jack Hanman. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the autopsy room. Today, you will have the dubious pleasure of following a full autopsy, step by step. For those of you who have already performed your first autopsy, this will refresh your basic knowledge. In turn, for those whose knowledge is only theoretical, I advise not to watch this after a meal.
Que un poco asqueroso, dice. Es para una videoclase. Pienso que sí ha de ser, no sé, yo desconozco si sea simulado
A considerable collection.
con la realidad.
A considerable collection.
Ok.
My own but trusted centrifuge. Ideal for all the fluid tests I need to perform during an autopsy.
Ok. Instrumentos de química. No sé. Aquí. Cositas. Usar la pizarra. Unas donitas.
I wasn't sure it would amount to anything, but the World Wide Web has been a blessing for speeding up my
Chingadera, ni
work.
sirve, ¿verdad? Vámonos. Bueno.
Let's
Ok.
start.
Dice, cuéntales a los estudiantes lo importante que es, lo que es importante en esta profesión. Número 1.
Always wear an apron, mask, and gloves. Goggles are a must when the job is splashy. And in case of sharp accidents, it's worth having disinfectants at hand. It's true that you won't get ptomaine poisoning straight away, but if your liver or kidney aren't doing well, you may end up with diarrhea.
Ok.
The cadaver is placed on its back on the autopsy table. The pathologist stands on the right of the deceased. Make sure that all the necessary tools are always at hand so that you don't have to run around looking for something, like I do all the time.
Ok.
In the process of revealing and securing forensic evidence, it is difficult not to interfere with the original condition of the deceased. Written and photographic documentation plays a vital role throughout the entire examination process. During your research, be patient, inquisitive, but above all, attentive to detail. Many entries are visible at first glance, but sometimes they can be cover for more interesting stories. And lastly, remember that nothing teaches you self-narration like working with the dead. So get used to that fact soon. Everyone will think you're talking to yourself.
Ok, ok.
Now, onto the police folder. That will contain all sorts of pertinent information as to who the deceased might be and what potentially happened to them. So, let's take a closer look, shall we?
Ok, vamos a echarle un vistazo de que murió el tipo. El tipo que tenemos aquí. Hay una contusión, un golpe. Ahí. Evidencia, policía, evidencia de la policía.
The deceased's name is Tobias Chambers,
Señor Tobías,
locally known as Old Toby.
el viejo Toby.
Homeless and unemployed for at least a couple of years.
Ok, entonces era un indigente porque decía que llevaba días sin... ok. Veamos.
The deceased was found on the outskirts of a parking lot at a gas
Una
station,
gasolinera.
where he often begged and persistently offered drivers to wash their car windows.
Ok, era un indigente. El viejo Toby.
The body was noticed by a station employee during the morning shift. Initially, he thought that someone had thrown some boots and a coat in a nearby ditch. It took him a moment to recognize the pile of clothes as the body of a man.
Ok. Fue en la gasolinera. Aquí, ¿qué esto qué es?
He worked most of his life at the local port dealing with unloaded cargo. He was fired for being drunk and starting fights. His son runs a
peleonero.
hardware store on his own. His wife left him years ago. They both had no contact with the deceased.
Uf. Uf.
Signs of libation were found around the body. Empty bottles, traces of an inept attempt to start a fire, and a scattered makeshift blanket.
Pero
That's
porque fue asesinado, ¿no? O vamos a descubrir por qué murió.
It's worth remembering the context around the scene of a death. This allows you to better interpret any traces found on the body. I shouldn't start the procedure without gloves.
Ok, vamos a ponernos unos guantes.
Now it's our turn to take some pictures for our files. If I can just remember where I left the camera. It's in here somewhere.
¿De cuál escritorio? ¿Del mío?
Aha! There you are. I knew it was here somewhere.
Ajá, muy bien.
As I mentioned at the beginning, before we begin the internal examination, we need to document the cadaver and the condition it arrived in. We begin with a full body photo. Try and stick to the top-down rule, but this is not always possible. Let's keep in mind it's all about the legibility, not the perfect frame. Voila. Now we move on to the next step.
Ok, así.
Looking for traces.
Bueno.
Take your time. Look at the corpse from different sides, from different angles, up close, and from a distance. You're looking for anything out of the ordinary.
Busca marcas. ¿Esta será una marca? Dice de diferentes ángulos. Esta, ¿no? Son marcas, ¿no? A ver, vamos a ver.
Some wounds in the feet and signs of frostbite.
Los pies, ¿no?
Probably because the
Los
subject's
pies
shoes
es
were too small.
¿Qué otra marca? ¿Qué otra marca? Las manos.
Hardened hands, worn out by physical work, and frostbite?
Congelación o frío, ¿no? Hipotermia.
That's something interesting. It will be necessary to check whether this injury was severe enough to cause damage to the brain.
¿Qué? ¿Qué otra parte del cuerpo? Aquí no.
The boiler healed wound. Looks old. I'll take a closer look later.
Venga.
In a moment, we will check which of our initial observations will be worthy of further consideration. But before we get to that, I need to write down some basic data.
¿Ese es el tablón de fotos? Ok. Ok. General, la cabeza una contusión, los pies pues todos madreados, una herida del lado derecho por la costilla, dice estómago, y las manos. Llevamos la autopsia.
Personal information. The deceased was unclothed. Date. Okay. As you can see, I note everything down on previously prepared forms. Every pathologist must keep a detailed record of every step of the autopsy. This not only allows you to track the procedure, but also collates the results together, upon which you may back up your conclusions. So, enough of the boring prep. Let's begin by taking a closer look at the spots I photographed earlier. For this, you're going to need a magnifying glass.
Con una lupa. ¿Dónde está la lupa?
Which spot first? It looks like a burn mark. No doubt painful, but it's not pertinent for this case.
¿Con una quemadura? ¿Zonas de interés?
I can confirm the presence of ecchymosis on the deceased man's head.
¿Equimosis?
The appearance indicates the intravital nature of the
¿Ese fue un
wound.
golpezazo o una caída?
Alcohol, which I can clearly smell. And this was an accident just waiting to happen.
Ok. Está tomando como una herida.
Here we can see frostbite on the fingertips. We can tell by the characteristic skin color.
Ok. ¿Dónde? ¿Dónde más? En las patas, ¿no?
Definitely a painful mix of frostbite, abrasions, and blisters. Old Toby had been wearing shoes too small for him for a very long time. That's if he wore any at all.
Ok, y el calzado muy apretado.
So far, there are a lot of superficial wounds, but only one serious injury to the head. Let's go back to our notes.
Resalta las heridas allá en el modelo del portapapeles. Portapapeles. Shit.
First, I mark the location of the injuries and make notes for each one. So...
¿Qué? Sin vestir. Ah, la
The
cabeza.
head wound. Definitely an important clue. This is something we'll investigate first.
Ok, la mano, ¿no?
We're not in frost season yet, but high humidity, wind, and the inability to warm up can also be causes of frostbite.
Ok.
Even though this type of wound didn't contribute to the deceased's death, we're still required to record it.
Antigua malcura, equimosis. Okay. Congelación avanzada en las yemas de los dedos. y el pie.
If Toby's body was cold for a prolonged period, the frostbite could have resulted from the body's defense reaction. The safety of the internal organs is more important than fingers, nose, or ears. As you can see, we don't have much to go on. Let's write down what preliminary causes of death we can think of. Various types of accidents are a common cause of death among the
Puede ser
homeless and
por
the elderly.
caída.
Perhaps
Okay.
old Toby slipped and accidentally hit his head.
Puede ser, andaba pedo, se cayó y se partió su madre, o se mató en un chingadazo.
Considering the conditions in which he slept, his
Hipotermia,
body may have become hypothermic.
hipotermia. Pues vivir en la calle, imagínate.
This is of no interest to us.
Pues dice que esa no es relevante porque es vieja la herida.
The nights have been particularly nasty lately. We will check if there are any signs of freezing internally. Since the deceased clearly smelled of alcohol, I'll add alcohol poisoning to our list.
Alcoholismo.
We still have one thing left from the basics. Rigor mortis.
Ok.
Well, we take our deceased by the hand,
¿Qué hacemos?
gradually we raise it, now let it go. As you can see, the hand falls loose.
La mano se
What's the
cae.
conclusion? Death must have occurred more than 72 hours ago. The police information
72
appears
horas.
correct.
Como 3 días, ¿no?
Head trauma seems the most promising, so we'll start there. For this, I need an oscillating saw.
La
The
sierra
cut is made
craneal.
from ear to ear.
Qué interesante esta parte. ¿Qué pasa? ¿Qué pasa? ¿Qué pasa? ¿Qué pasa? ¿Qué pasa, juego? ¡Juego de mierda!
After which, we remove
le
the skin
quitamos la
and the
tapa.
top of the skull.
Empieza a realizar un análisis completo del cerebro examinando un órgano.
After the
nomás
basic
lo quitamos.
examination, we can see that the brain's cerebral gyri in both hemispheres are symmetric. The brain looks good. Let's take a cross-section. Some pathologists prefer to examine organs without removing them. However, for me, it's much more convenient to examine them on a
En la
board.
tabla. ¿Cuál
Which we'll do
tabla?
now.
Tenemos el cerebro del señor. ¿Dónde? ¿Dónde lo examinamos? ¿Acá? Ah, ya.
Holding a long, narrow blade knife in the dominant hand, we slowly cut the cranial nerves on both sides, all the time pulling the brain towards us.
¿Qué?
So far, so good.
Ok.
The hematoma seems to have had no effect on the brain.
No hay hematoma en el cerebro, ¿no? O sea, no hay chingadazo. O sea, el chingadazo no le afectó. Bueno. ¿Qué hacemos?
We can rule the fatal accident out as well.
Ok. Shift. ¿Qué? Comentario. Ajá. luego, ¿qué
Brain is
hacemos?
in good condition,
Ah,
so we
ok.
have no choice but to proceed to the internal examination of the other
O sea,
organs.
descartamos caída. La caída no lo mató. Probablemente la congelación o el alcoholismo.
I grab a scalpel from my kit.
¿El bisturí?
The incision should be in the shape of a letter Y. We use a deep cut to reach all the way to the ribs and to penetrate the abdominal wall.
Está muy sensible el mouse. No, man, no sirvo para diseccionar.
All right.
Ok.
Now we peel back and separate the skin.
Qué impresionante es el cuerpo humano, güey. O sea, eso es lo que tenemos debajo de del grosor de la piel que tenemos.
Now, we need to remove the ribs. We'll need the loppers for this.
Selecciona el costótomo. Costótomo. ¿Qué es el costótomo? Las pinzas, ¿verdad?
Quite a satisfying crunch, for some anyway. After removing the cartilage tissue, we instantly notice two things. Firstly, there is no congestion of the internal organs.
No hay
This
congestión.
means that although the deceased was hypothermic, it didn't kill him. Secondly, the deceased smoked like a chimney. So,
Tenemos-
we should take a closer look at those lungs.
Tiene los pulmones. Pero súper cabrones, güey.
We can see widespread black and tarry deposit. Despite the tragic condition of the lungs, they are not the cause of death. Alice smoked too. It didn't kill her, but... what was I talking about? Lungs. Yes. Advanced inflammation.
Inflamación avanzada. Fumaba como la chingada este pendejo, güey. Fíjate todo lo importante como es la autopsia, ¿no? Derivan la causa de muerte. Pulmones con extensos depósitos negros, grisáceos, cambios inflamatorios visibles y distensión excesiva del tejido pulmonar causados por el tabaquismo. Pulmones con inflamación avanzada no relacionada con la muerte del fallecido.
What now? The syringe. Now's a good time to collect some samples.
¿La jeringuilla? Dijo la jeringuilla.
Specifically 3. From the eye, the heart, and the bladder. I'm interested to see the concentration of alcohol in the body. Vitreous humor analysis is very useful in indicating long-term alcohol abuse.
Ok. Le interesa la
5 milliliters
concentración.
in the left ventricle should do it.
Ok. ¿Y esto qué es? ¿La piel? ¿La vejiga?
Left on the bladder, we draw about 10 milliliters of fluid. Now we take our samples to the centrifuge. But before I do that, I need to find my notebook. My dyscalculia means that I always double-check the settings. Please excuse me while I run and fetch it.
Vamos a la oficina. No te vayas a levantar, pendejo, ¿eh? What?
They definitely pay me.
Ve a la oficina o por el cuaderno con los valores necesarios. ¿Es aquí? No, métete.
It won't be needed for the next few months.
¿Es acá entonces o dónde es?
Not very comfortable, but suitable for night shifts.
Dice, ve a la oficina. No, las revistas de Playboy no. ¿Dónde están? Donde el güey se mueva, voy a valer madres, ¿eh?
Archives. Just as lifeless as the corpses they concern.
¿Cuál, güey? ¿Cuál, güey? A ver. Ah, acá está. Qué pendejo, güey.
This whole thing is covered in stains. I should check this out under the microscope sometime.
Ok.
Let's get back to the examination.
Qué impresionante ver a alguien así, ¿no?
We put all of the samples into the rotor.
Tiene que ver el grado de alcoholismo, ¿no? Que tiene el cuate este.
Now we set the appropriate time and speed.
¿Y cuáles son los valores correctos, güey? Ustedes saben cuáles son los valores correctos. Mierda. No sé. A ver, N. Tiempo 15 minutos, velocidad a 70. Chingada madre.
Okay, let's roll. My own but trusted centrifuge. Ideal for all the fluid tests I need to perform.
Vas a parar, güey.
Autopsy. Oh, shit. The fuses again.
What?
Where were we? Oh, yes. The blood alcohol concentration. Let's see what we've got here. Everything's separated as it should. Our lab is closed until tomorrow after the last, incident. However, considering that Toby's favorite eau de parfum appears to be ethanol, I'm guessing the results won't surprise me at all. Let's go further. We will now focus on the cardiovascular system, specifically the heart.
El corazón. Don Corazón.
We remove the organ
No se
and
amamos.
examine it closely. We look for dark hypoxic areas, clots, or other elements that stand out as abnormal. At first glance, the heart looks fine. The pulmonary trunk and aorta seem to be in good condition. There are no pathological changes that would have contributed to Toby's death.
Un corazón sano.
Now let's take a closer look at the stomach.
Cerca del estómago. Empieza a realizar un análisis exhaustivo del estómago examinando el órgano.
Size is normal, healthy, pink color.
Sano, normal.
And as expected, the stomach has no major external damage.
No fue el
We
corazón,
must
no
now
fue el
cut it
estómago.
open and inspect inside.
Okay.
We will do it carefully so that its contents do not spill out.
Ok, vamos aquí. Lo abrimos.
We open the stomach along
Ah,
the
no seas
greater
mamón,
curvature,
güey.
from the heart to the pyloric end. Oh, I already feel like there's something left inside.
¿Qué comiste, Mr. Toby o Don Toby?
Okay, large amount of gas. Small amounts
Puro
of
gas.
yellow, grayish food content, resembling some kind of meat.
Ok.
Either our deceased hadn't eaten in days, or the bulk of his stomach had already found a way out. Looks like I'll have to find the missing contents.
O sea, no había comido en días, imagínate. Puro alcohol, güey.
There are two ways here. One is obvious. And the other is... It couldn't have been suffocation, could it?
No digerido.
I'll add this to the list and move on to the deceased's neck.
Que... Ah, pudo haber sido por asfixia, mira. Ya añadió otro. Empieza a realizar un análisis exhaustivo de la tráquea, examinando el órgano.
At first glance, the trachea looks normal. Same result as with the stomach. The external inspection doesn't tell us anything.
La
This time we'll
garganta,
cut
el
on a tray.
pescuezo. El pescuezao. Que no presenta daños.
While cutting such a small organ as the trachea, we must make a precise incision.
Ok, vamos a ver si no se atragantó con algo, ¿no? Ajá.
To be able to cut with the very tip of the blade, we must hold the scalpel as we would a pen.
Dios, está muy sensible esto.
And after careful examination and deduction, we've got it. A clogged trachea. It's time to summarize the whole thing.
En el de Mortuary te hacen drenar primero toda la sangre, ¿no? La sangre para que no haya tanto rollo, ¿no? Aquí no pasó. Pero muy interesante, a ver. Sigamos viendo. Ajá.
Based on the report and preliminary documentation, it's safe to assume that the deceased passed out after consumption of alcohol and then fell asleep on his back.
Ok. Fue una congestión, ¿no?
Then, the gastric contents refluxed and flooded the airways, causing death.
Por alcoholismo, ¿no?
That's why we don't forget about the recovery position at dorm parties.
Asfixia, ahogamiento, se ahogó. Ok, no fue una caída, no se congeló. Tenía alcohol, no fue por alcoholismo, entonces se asfixió por las vías pulmonares, dijo, ¿no? Algo así. El fallecido probablemente se quedó dormido o se desmayó tras haber ingerido una gran cantidad de alcohol. Entonces sí fue por alcohol. Su concentración suprimió las señales del cerebro que controlan el reflejo faríngeo, lo que provocó el atragantamiento. Tomó tanto alcohol que el cerebro ya no respondió y presta. No. Ok. Decide cuáles fueron las circunstancias de la muerte. Asfixia. Y si me equivoco, o sea, todo lo que revisan es la tráquea, el estómago, el corazón, los pulmones y el cerebro principal, Tobias. Por accidente, ¿no?
And now it's all clear. The death was suffocation. Now, signature. The mystery is solved. But for us, this is not the end. First, the dead body needs to be cleaned up.
¡Ja! Ahí está. Ahí está, perros. Firmado. Autógrafo.
For this, we will need to close the body and grab the needle. First, we unroll the skin flaps. And then, we sew the deceased back up. I'm using the baseball stitch technique. This stitching method is very strong and quick to do.
Lo cosemos. Y listo, papá.
Beautiful.
Dejamos el
Now we say
cuerpo.
goodbye to the deceased and put them
Adiós,
safely in
Toby.
the fridge, ready for the next stage of their journey. God, I'm tired.
Nos vemos.
I'll drop these samples off at the lab on the way to the bar.
Ok, vámonos. Toby, no te vayas a salir de ahí, cabrón, ¿eh? Vámonos.
I'll go, Stephen. I don't feel like drinking alone today.
Ok. Pues muy interesante, ¿no, mi gente? Muy interesante. No mames. What? ¿Qué pasa? Ay, cabrón. Pinche screamer. ¿Qué pasa con la cabeza? Ahora. ¿Qué pasa? ¿Qué ha pasado? Me van a diseccionar unos pinches chingadazos. ¡Órale! Impresionante, ¿no? Hacer la autopsia de un cadáver. Ok. Mientras no se salga el güey de la cajita donde lo metimos, no hay pedo. Ok, el señor pues se atragantó de tanto alcohol que se asfixió. Su cerebro ya no respondió y luego no comía. Eso es lo que le puede pasar a algunas personas en esta parte. Ok, jugadores y jugadoras, pues vamos a dejarle por aquí en este primer acercamiento de Autopsy Simulator. La verdad parece muy agradable. Ya nos enseñaron cómo manejar más o menos todas las cosas y vamos a dejarle por aquí para que posteriormente sigamos con los capítulos, ¿sale? Si te agradó el contenido, dale like, suscríbete y compártelo con quien más confianza le tengas. Sin más que añadir, nos vemos en la siguiente. Cuídense mucho y hasta luego.